In public life, if you want to be somebody who does something worthwhile, you've got to be prepared to take criticism.
One-on-one at this time on Al Jazeera.
I know I'm getting a lot more from Al Jazeera than I was getting from other stations.
This coverage is not biased, it's not, one-sided.
It's a very revolutionary channel.
Jazeera have been very effective.
Al Jazeera has given me a diverse and broader spectrum of global politics in general.
It entertains an independent attitude.
But there could always be more.
All the news, all the time. aljazeera.net/English.
Victims of tradition.
Melissa is the 31st annual Ontario Tobacco Queen.
Grandma's finally stopped smoking.
Trapped between worlds.
Somalis have been at the heart of some of the most high-profile murder cases in the United Kingdom.
Without a camera, I think we'd be able to go in there and talk to them.
A bridge between cultures.
This is a top event in the Jola culture.
I guess it works.
Witness after the news on Al Jazeera.
Gaza's crippled economy, a generation of children forced to grow up early. Al Jazeera has found children as young as 10 being put to work full-time to provide for their families. I'm Shuli Ghosh, this is Al Jazeera. Also on the programme, where electioneering means little as Russia prepares to vote, we meet 18 people crammed into one small apartment in Putin's hometown. Venezuela's president warms up for an historic referendum by issuing threats to Spain and the US. And ending the stigma and isolation, how India is trying to change attitudes to AIDS and HIV. As Israeli and Palestinian leaders get to work on fresh efforts to bring peace to the Middle East, a generation of young Palestinians are losing out on their childhood. On the streets of Gaza, growing numbers of children are being sent out to work. With unemployment around 70% in Gaza, they're being forced to take on the role of provider for their struggling families. Owen Fay has this report.
Mohammed works full-time in this mechanics shop. 2 years ago, he left school to come and work here. Instead of studying and playing like other children, he works each day in order to earn about $50 a month. Mohammed is the sole provider for a family of 9, and he's 10 years old.
I left school to help my father and mother. There is no one to provide for us at home. I have 6 brothers and sisters. My parents chose this job for me. I like it.
Rasha, too, carries the burden of having to be a provider for her family at such an early age. She spends her days dodging between cars hoping for a handout, or trying to convince people to buy something from her for a handful of shekels. But it's clear she misses the life of ordinary girls her age.
I sell biscuits or gum or anything else. That's why we don't go to school. We don't have anything. We have to buy vegetables for the house and medicine for my mother. But I would like to go to school and wear a uniform like the other girls.
The spread of child labor in Gaza is raising major concerns. More than half the population here is under 18. Children now make up 7% of the labor force, and that number is rising.
I wish my children could go to school, but I can't send them to one. Who's going to provide for us? I was forced to send them out to the street so we could have an income. I'm ill and divorced. I have no other family. I have no one. Only God.
For 4 years now, Rasha and her sisters have been on the streets. It's a trend that's growing, and one which will likely keep growing as long as the occupation lasts. Owen Fay, Al Jazeera.
Well, staying with Gaza, 5 Hamas fighters have been killed and at least 2 others injured in an Israeli airstrike. The 5 men all belong to the Ezzedine al-Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas. Hamas says the attack happened near Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. The Israeli army has confirmed the airstrike, saying it launched the overnight raid after spotting armed men near the border with Israel. Now, they've still got around 24 hours to make up their minds on who to vote for in Russia, but no one has any doubt on the overall outcome of Sunday's parliamentary elections. More than 100 million people will cast their vote across the vast nation. The United Russia Party, which just happens to have non-party member Vladimir Putin at the top of its list, is expected to win a huge majority. But in a country with more than 80,000 millionaires, some people are worrying more about where their next meal is coming from rather than who they'll be voting for. Jonah Hull reports.
An evening at the ballet for Russia's rising middle class. The world-famous Mariinsky, one of the jewels of St. Petersburg, once the pleasure of the proletariat. Today, high prices mean the ballet is more exclusive. Most other things too. Russia's second city, capital of the Tsars, hometown of President Putin, is being restored after decades of neglect. But behind the veil of newfound prosperity, the city hides its poor. 18 people live in this Soviet-era communal apartment, 5 families with no relationship besides the intimate sharing of pre-revolutionary facilities. They own the apartment now, given to them by the state when communism collapsed. But 16 years on, meager wages, unemployment and low pensions mean these people, like many Russians, can't afford to move on.
We don't want to just survive. We want to live on our own as normal people do. If the government solved this problem instead of just talking about it, we'd support them.
President Putin himself grew up in a Soviet-style communal apartment here at number 12 Baskov Periolek. He recalls hordes of rats in the entranceway that he and friends used to chase with sticks. Well, much has changed, of course, in Putin's Russia. Many things for the better, some for worse. In Soviet times, homelessness was a crime. This woman would have been imprisoned. Today, she and Russia's 4.5 million homeless are left out in the cold. Charities do what they can, but the homeless are excluded from a complicated system of registration that would guarantee their basic rights. There is no federal assistance. They have no access to health care. They don't officially exist.
The homeless don't have the right to vote, so the government doesn't care about them. Even though the numbers are big, there isn't the same concern as there is for HIV patients, drug addicts and the handicapped.
I don't know anything about politics. I don't understand it. It is so far from my life. They have their world, we have ours. Let them deal with it.
In the last 8 years, Russia has grown rich on oil and gas. Good years for Putin's Petersburg. Bad for those on the wrong side of a widening wealth gap, thousands of whom will die on Russia's streets this winter. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera, St. Petersburg.
And speaking earlier to Al Jazeera's Lawrence Lee, Kimmo Kiljunen from Europe's main election monitoring body explained why his organisation hasn't sent its usual team of observers to Russia.
There was some restrictions and that's why ODIHR withdraw. It's unfortunate and it creates a very strange situation now that we do have a parliamentary assembly but not the other side.
And have you ever known a situation like this before?
No, it's first time and it's a strange situation because all OECD countries have committed to the situation that they allow each other to monitor the elections. So that's a normal situation that we can come to observe elections wherever they take place between Vancouver and Vladivostok. It's North America and whole Europe.
Russia, of course, is a member of the OSCE as well, but they would say, well, you don't go and monitor elections in Western European countries, you only pick on us. Go back home.
And that is actually a fair argument from Russian side. I don't think so that they put the restrictions for us because of any other reasons than that one, that they wanted to get balanced picture. They were criticizing that when we sent observers to United States, we had only a limited number. When we said to Western Europe, we usually don't observe the elections. And that argument is valid. We should obviously start also observe elections in more mature democracies.
Well, while Russia's election looks like a foregone conclusion, things aren't so certain for Hugo Chavez and his referendum in Venezuela. 16 million Venezuelans are being asked to vote yes or no on a reform of the constitution. The president says he's trying to return power to the people. But as Lucia Newman reports from Caracas, opponents say it's another step towards communism.
Dressed in revolutionary red, President Hugo Chavez made his last appeal for support for his sweeping constitutional reforms.
On Sunday, December 2nd, we will give another knockout blow to George Bush, to U.S. imperialism. That's what's at the heart of this battle, the battle for our independence.
The festive atmosphere at Chavez's last rally before Sunday's controversial referendum belied concern about the outcome. According to most opinion polls, for the first time in 8 years, President Chavez is not certain to get his way. Even many of his staunchest supporters worry his constitutional reforms would concentrate too much power in the presidency. That's why Chavez, who still enjoys wide personal support, is portraying the referendum not as a choice for or against the constitutional reforms, but rather as a vote for or against him. Whatever our president does, we know it's for us, for the poor people, says this woman. Some reforms are widely supported. A 6-hour workday, reducing the voting age to 16, and guaranteeing pensions for the self-employed and housewives. But other reforms would give Chavez sweeping discretionary powers to cement a socialist economic model and eliminate freedom of expression and other civil rights under special circumstances. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Caracas.
The United Nations has recently downsized its estimates of those living with HIV/AIDS, but the figure is still a staggering 33 million people across the globe. In many countries, carriers of the virus face social isolation. In India, 2.5 million people are HIV positive, and in rural areas, the social stigma has led to many committing suicide. But as Matt McClure reports from Delhi, there's now a new campaign for better awareness.
This Delhi treatment center is their only refuge. The retroviral drugs available here, their final hope. Men like Vinod Mandol, who battle alone against the AIDS virus and the stigma in India of being HIV positive. My family dropped me off here when I became sick, he whispers. I haven't heard from them since. About 2.5 million Indians are infected with HIV. The government provides drug therapy to about 100,000 of them.
But there's a looming problem. Many of those infected are developing resistance to first-line drugs. They now need more expensive second-line medication, or they'll die.
Loon Gangti is a rebel with a cause. HIV positive himself, he's been battling tirelessly with authorities, urging them to make second-line treatment available to those who need it, and educate illiterate patients on the importance of taking their medication each day without fail.
Know that your close friend, he has no more thing in life, all he has to wait is death. How can I sleep peacefully? How can you sleep peacefully? I don't know how to explain that. It gives me a sleepless night.
Faced with this pressure, the Indian government now says it will start providing second-line drugs in January. At $200 or more a month for each patient, it won't be cheap. India's new patent law means generic substitutes won't be available in this country or anywhere else.
Now, India is the supplier of antiretroviral treatment to the developing world. It's in fact aptly called the pharmacy of the developing world. If India stops production, you have approximately 33 million people who are dependent on India's production in their lives in jeopardy.
It's a haunting specter for those who are HIV positive. Ostracized by their families, outcasts everywhere in this conservative society except among others who are infected, now hoping the Indian government will care enough to ensure they get the drugs they need to survive. Matt McClure, Al Jazeera, Delhi.
Well, joining us now from Delhi is Mike Ton Singh, an HIV patient and member of the Delhi network of positive people. Mr. Ton Singh, just explain first of all what your organisation does.
Yeah, what we does is that mainly we advocate for access to treatment, and then we educate our community regarding treatment literacy and the availability of ARV drugs. And then what we usually do is that for a person who are on ARV, we educate them on the importance of taking a medicine in time, the importance of positive living, and the importance of taking medicine in time as well. And apart from that, we also inform them about the possible side effect of ARV.
But it seems that only a very small proportion of HIV patients are getting treatment. Why isn't the government doing more?
See, most of the PLHA community are not aware about the treatment available, because the government are not doing about campaign about the availability of ARV, even though there's a lot of print media and other they advertise it about regarding this condom use and other HIV awareness, but they don't give information about the ARV treatment. And then apart from that, there are many information about regarding HIV and AIDS, but there are hardly any available of this treatment literacy, because when a person is on ARV, it's a lifelong treatment, and then to get maximum benefit of this ARV, a person has to know when to take it and how to take it, and then what it does in his body.
Okay.
So that is very, very important.
Mike Ton Singh from the Delhi network of positive people, thank you very much indeed for that.
Oh.
Well, time for a short break now, but still to come, the cheap medicines risking lives instead of saving them. Why Nigeria is cracking down.
After 2 terms as president of Russia, Vladimir Putin must stand down. For many Russians, Putin remains the strongman of world politics and guardian of Russia's steady economic growth. Now the world watches to see if he can pull off his biggest gamble yet, to hold on to power by becoming the nation's prime minister. Will he succeed? Join us for the result, the Russian parliamentary election, on Al Jazeera.
This week on Every Woman, with over 33 million people living with HIV and AIDS worldwide, we mark World AIDS Day with stories on the politics of prevention.
They say poor people, uneducated people will not be able to be adherent. But I am adherent.
And the culture of sexual abuse. Every Woman on Al Jazeera.
Power to control, to influence, to suppress. What is power? Power to create, to gain, to detain, to inspire. How can power be defined? People and Power on Al Jazeera.
No other channel shows you the real Sudan. Its cities, its drama, its fighters, its victims, its traditions, its future, its daily life. All sides, all views, always Al Jazeera.
Again, welcome back. A reminder of our top story. As talks begin on a post-Annapolis agreement, dire poverty is forcing a growing number of Palestinian children to be sent out to work. Al Jazeera has found children as young as 10 in full-time jobs in Gaza. And as Israeli and Palestinian leaders get down to work on that Annapolis agreement, the US has done an about-turn on a UN resolution endorsing the deal. It was on the table for less than 24 hours. The hasty withdrawal came amid reports that Israel wasn't happy with the text. Anand Naidu has the details.
According to diplomats at the United Nations, Israel doesn't want the Security Council involved in the Annapolis process. And at this stage, it appears that Washington has acquiesced to the Israeli wish.
We had a series of intensive consultations over the past few days, and the upshot was that there was some unease with the idea of that type of product, and the focus, we all realized again, should be placed and remain on Annapolis.
The UN resolution endorses this week's agreement in Annapolis to resume Middle East peace negotiations and reach a peace settlement by 2008. According to UN sources, the United States UN ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad introduced it without getting broad support from the Israelis, the Palestinians or the White House. It was evident that the Bush administration was caught off guard by the latest developments.
Can you tell us why the U.S. has withdrawn a resolution in the Security Council which praised the Israelis?
I checked right before I came out here. That has just happened up at the UN. The quick answer that I got was that they didn't think it was a necessary resolution in order to get the peace negotiations underway and launched. It started earlier this week in Annapolis, and that's all I have for you.
Why was it put forward if it wasn't necessary?
I don't have anything on that. I literally checked on it right before I came down, which is why I was a little bit late. But that was all I got, was that the reason it was pulled down was that they felt it wasn't necessary.
Two United States officials told the Associated Press that U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice withdrew the document because Washington was concerned the Security Council may have added anti-Israeli language to the resolution. Anand Naidu, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Fake and substandard medical drugs are becoming big business in Nigeria. They're smuggled into the country and sold on the streets at bargain prices. But far from curing illnesses, they could be endangering people's health. Authorities in Lagos are now starting to crack down on the problem. Harry Matasa joined police on one of their early morning raids.
A frantic attempt to get out of trouble. He's been caught red-handed. Officials suspect the medical drugs he's selling are probably filled with chalk and olive oil, not the real thing. Armed police hurry things along. They don't want the crowd to get excited. The suspect is put in the car and the search continues. Most of his drugs were made in China. His colleague begs to be set free. He swears he's innocent, but no one's listening. These raids happen 2 or 3 times a week, and despite the chaos, there is some order here. The police have been surveying this area for days. They know who and where their targets are. On the way to the police station, the men don't seem to comprehend just how dangerous their drugs are.
The medicine that they're exposing to heat, to sunlight, to moisture, are no longer safe to use. They become poison, toxic.
9 suspects were caught in under an hour. Those who admit to breaking the law say they're desperate.
Because of the poverty, lack of money, no job. No job, there's no job to do.
Officials have no sympathy for them.
Do you make a living through crime? You don't. You look for something that is not against the law to do.
Counterfeit drug dealing has decreased significantly over the years, thanks in part to the work of Dora Akunyili. She's made enemies, though, and now needs 24-hour protection. An attempt was made on her life in 2003, and her son was once kidnapped. Her sister died from taking fake insulin.
Fake drugs violate the right to life of innocent victims. These merchants of death, they have no conscience. It does not matter to them how many people die at a time. What is important to them is the money they make. And for 30 years or more, they were like gods in this country. And people know them, people knew them, but nobody could challenge them.
She's right. The men arrested are all small fish who refuse to tell the police who their suppliers are. They'll probably pay a bribe or the $100 bank draft needed to post bail. Some will rely on a higher being to get them out of a bind. Haru Matasa, Al Jazeera, Lagos.
Some news in brief now. An estimated 80 would-be immigrants have drowned after their boat sank near the eastern coast of Yemen. Dozens of bodies were pulled from the waves by rescuers and fishermen. It's thought more than 120 people, mostly from Somalia and Ethiopia, had crammed into the boat. 45 survivors are now in the care of the UN's refugee agency. The European Union's foreign policy chief says he's disappointed that Iran won't compromise over its nuclear program. 5 hours of talks between Javier Solana and Iran's top nuclear negotiator Saeed Jalili in London ended without progress. The 6 countries who've been negotiating with Iran are now meeting in Paris, and the UN's likely to come under more pressure to impose new sanctions. A group of former Ugandan rebels say a Lord's Resistance Army commander who pushed for peace talks has been executed. LRA defectors say they saw Deputy Leader Vincent Otti, considered the brains behind the group, killed on October the 2nd on the orders of Leader Joseph Kony. The men say the killing is the main reason they surrendered to the UN mission in Congo. They, along with 3 child soldiers, have now been flown back to Uganda's capital. Now, US presidential front-runner Hillary Clinton says her campaign will go ahead as planned, despite a man taking several people hostage at one of her offices. The hostage-taker, who's believed to have a history of mental illness, entered the office claiming he was armed with a bomb. Hamish MacDonald has the story.
After nearly 6 hours, a peaceful surrender. Wearing what appeared to be a bomb, 47-year-old Leland Eisenberg carefully removed the device strapped to his waist. It was only later it was revealed the device was made of road flares. Gradually, he inched closer towards police, handing himself over and calmly obeying police orders. It all started much more dramatically when the distraught man entered Hillary Clinton's regional campaign office in New Hampshire just before 1 p.m., demanding to speak to the presidential hopeful. She was in Washington, D.C., but local authorities were taking no risks.
I want our residents to know that the area is stabilized, that we're very confident, that we have the resources available to us to handle this situation.
Eisenberg took several hostages, all of whom were eventually freed unharmed. It all made for another dramatic day on the US presidential campaign trail.
It's been a very difficult day, personally and emotionally, as I'm sure you would all understand if this were to happen to anyone. You care immediately about the safety of the people directly affected.
Eisenberg reportedly has a history of mental health problems. The system's approach to dealing with those issues is what it's thought he wanted to discuss with the senator. Hamish MacDonald, Al Jazeera.
And that's it from us for now. Before we go, reminder you can follow all the main stories on our website, including the Russian election due to take place Sunday. The website address, aljazeera.net/English. I'm back with the headlines straight after the break. Bye-bye.
Hello there, we will see increasing cloud just making its way across central and southeastern parts of China. It's not looking too bad at the moment. I think Hong Kong will remain fine and dry. But as I said, that cloud will sink its way a little further southwards. It's been lovely here recently, a little more in the way of inclement weather to come as we go on through the next couple of days. A little further southwards, Southern parts of Luzon will see some outbreaks of rain, quite a rash of showers coming in here over the next day or two, longer spells of rain by Monday. And some of that wet weather also affecting a good part of Southeast Asia, a good deal of cloud showing up here. Showers about where they should be, following the sun further southwards, and we will see quite a rash of very heavy rain across southern Borneo into Sumatra. Push a little further northwards and it's looking pretty good across a good part of Thailand, Bangkok, with highs of around 32 or 33 degrees over the next few days. Similar values across much of South Asia, but more in the way of cloud up the Western Ghats, and 1 or 2 showers to come into northern parts of Pakistan, maybe into the northwest of India too. No sign of any rain across the Arabian Peninsula. A lot of fine, dry and sunny weather. Temperatures typically around 29 Celsius, but further north, fair amount of wet weather rolling in across the Levant countries, pushing its way across Iraq into northern parts of Iran. There will be some outbreaks of rain to come here. Highs in Tehran of 12 degrees Celsius.
Witness, next on Al Jazeera.
What we want to do is to tell the stories that simply aren't being told.
Documentaries, current affairs.
The military have no intention of backing down.
People are struggling to cope.
And entertainment. Showing you our world from a fresh perspective. Al Jazeera, setting the news agenda.
East on Al Jazeera.
They've just 48 hours.
Is it dangerous?
To get the lowdown on the world's greatest political...
This time, we're in Havana.
...and cultural hotspots.
We're in Old Delhi now. That was brilliant.
We're also being traditionally welcomed.
Which tastes better?
Join Amanda Palmer and the team.
Hello!
For an alternative look at the planet.
I don't know what I'm doing. You had any enhancements at all?
48 on Al Jazeera.
I'm Shuli Ghosh in Doha. The main stories here on Al Jazeera. Thousands of Palestinians have taken to the streets of Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip for the funerals of 5 men killed in an Israeli airstrike. The men were all members of Hamas's military wing, Ezzedine al-Qassam brigades. The Israeli army says it launched the overnight raid after armed men were spotted near the border with Israel. Well, as talks begin on a post-Annapolis agreement, dire poverty is forcing a growing number of Palestinian children to be sent out to work. Al Jazeera has found children as young as 10 in full-time jobs in Gaza. 70% of Gazans live well below the poverty line, and more children are taking on the role of provider for their families. Hugo Chavez is threatening to halt oil sales to the United States if it backs his opponents to sabotage Sunday's referendum. 16 million Venezuelans are being asked to vote yes or no to reform the constitution. The president says he's trying to return power to the people, but his opponents say he's trying to impose communism. World AIDS Day is being marked around the world. Campaigners in Washington want more help from the White House. The US Capitol has 10 times more HIV cases than the national average. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa continue to have most new cases, and Estonia has the fastest rate in Europe because of drug use. At least 13 people have been killed in Iraq after dozens of suspected al-Qaeda fighters stormed a Shia village. The attack took place on the village of Dwella, about 75 kilometers outside the capital, Baghdad. Police officials say around 50 armed fighters opened fire on the village, torching homes and forcing families to flee. In Georgia, as many as 10 teenagers have been killed after their van spun out of control, hit a barrier and burst into flames. The driver and front seat passenger were able to escape, but not the young people in the back. Former Ugandan rebels say a Lord's Resistance Army commander who pushed for peace talks has been executed. They say Vincent Otti, who was the army's deputy leader and mastermind, was killed in October on the orders of leader Joseph Kony. More talks are due in Paris later on Iran's nuclear controversy. After talks in London, the European Union's foreign policy chief Javier Solana said he was disappointed Iran won't compromise. Iranian negotiator Saeed Jalili said more sanctions won't deter Iran because the current sanctions haven't had any effect. That's it. We'll be back with news in half an hour, but stay tuned for Witness.
Hello, I'm Raggy Omar and this is Witness. In this edition, we take a look at a country that has often avoided tackling the crisis of HIV and AIDS. The bodies and the proof lie in Avalon, the cemetery in the Black Township of Soweto. South Africa has one of the highest rates of HIV infection in the world. An estimated 5.4 million citizens are infected with the virus. For years, the country and its president, Thabo Mbeki, publicly questioned the relationship between HIV and AIDS. Leaders talked about the protective powers of beets and lemons and delayed the distribution of antiretroviral drugs. The government is changing its stance, but that is little comfort to the families of the victims of AIDS. To see what the neglect of prevention and treatment have wrought, I visited Avalon, a place of life and death where the causes of death have transformed radically over the years. A cemetery on the edge of Soweto Township. South Africans come here in the early hours of the morning to visit their ancestors' final resting place. Its name is Avalon. Christian, Jewish or Muslim, black or white, rich or poor, old or young. Everyone is equal in death here, and has been since Avalon opened in 1972. Thousands buried here died fighting to end the inequalities of apartheid. The freedom struggle, as it became known, erupted into violence on June 16th, 1976. Nothing would be the same again. After decades of injustice, the children of Soweto took to the streets. It began as a peaceful demonstration, but the police